So over the past year, I put a big focus on learning more things about my camera and especially how to operate them. So learning things like shutter speed, aperture, exposure, ND filters. And what I noticed is that there's a lot of videos and tutorials about things like how to get the most cinematic shots or 4K cameras and camera reviews. But there's not too many videos that really tell you what kind of camera you should get based on your use case. So that's what we're going to do in this edition of the studio. We're going to take a look at different use cases and the best camera for that fit and basically the best camera for your budget. All right, so let's talk about the camera that most people forget about, and it's probably the best camera that they have in most cases, which is their cell phone. So using your cell phone as a camera, especially with your content creation software, is pretty straightforward. If you have XSplit VCam installed, all you need to do is install the XSplit Connect app on your phone, and then make sure your camera and your PC are on the same connection, on the same Wi-Fi connection. And basically your phone will be able to connect to VCam, and then you can add it as a source within your streaming software. And you can even do some things like replace the background, which is pretty neat for a fake green screen effect. But it's very straightforward and easy to use. If you'd like to find out more about XSplit VCam or XSplit Connect, you can click on one of the links above. So if you really do need to buy a camera and you don't have that much of a budget, I recommend starting off with a Logitech C920 webcam. These are really the gold standard cameras and they'll last you a long time. And if you want to make them look a bit more flashy, you can use them with XSplit VCam. And you can create that nice blur effect to make it look like a DSLR. So if you're really looking to take a dive into getting like a full-fledged camera, you really need to consider what your budget is. So if you don't have a massive budget, it can really balloon quickly. So if you don't have the budget for, say, a nice camera body and lenses and a capture card, then you're probably going to want to go with what's known as point and shoot cameras. Now these tend to have pretty fairly wide angle and they tend to be fairly inexpensive. But the good thing is that most of these, you can actually use these with software that'll turn them into webcams. So you won't need to buy a capture card, you just need to hook them up via USB. Now the frame rate and resolution might not be the best, but you can get pretty far with these. So the Sony ZV-1 or the Canon G7X Mark III, these are pretty good starter cameras in this price range. So now if you're gonna get super serious mode, there's basically two categories of cameras in this class. So the first is like interchangeable lens cameras like DSLR, mirrorless cameras. And the next is camcorders, and I don't mean like those big, huge camcorders you've seen film birthday parties, but they each apply to their own use case. So let's take a look at interchangeable lens first. So these interchangeable lens cameras, there's so many different ones, so many different lenses and bodies that it can be really crazy to go over all of them. So we're gonna talk about some features that are really important. So the first one is having a clean HDMI output. So basically, you can output the HDMI to a capture card and it won't display the info display, or you can turn it off. The next thing is the actual HDMI port. A lot of these have mini or micro HDMI outs. If you can find a full-size HDMI, that's the best, but those tend to be more pricey. And the next thing is sensor size. So there's micro four thirds, APS-C, and also full frame. And this basically means a crop factor on the lens. So if you have micro four thirds, it's like 2 times crop factor. So a 60mm will actually be 32mm. So basically this depends on the distance that you are from the camera. Like you might have a lens that you thought was wide, but it actually has you zoomed in. So pay attention to those sensor sizes. And the reason for this is because this is usually a stationary camera. You're not gonna wanna move it around too much. So as for which camera looks best, it's all really subjective. Basically, if you want just really good colors straight out of the box with not too much tweaking, maybe go with Canon or Fuji. If you want to tweak a bit, go with Canon or Panasonic, but they can all look really good. It's really up to you and how you want to use them. So camcorders differ from interchangeable lens cameras in the sense that you're probably going to use these for event coverage. So one of the key features you're going to want to look out for is an SDI output, because these are good for long cable runs. And some good entry-level cameras in this range are like the Sony PXW X70 or the Canon XA15. And these are going to cost you at least $1,000, but they're going to be pretty rugged. They might have XLR ports. Now, as I mentioned before, there's a tier above this, which is cinema cameras. So like the Canon C200 and the Sony FX6. Now, these are really expensive and probably out of the price range for most people. But if you want something that you're going to use for events and also, video work and basically can do everything, these are great options to go for. So I know this is a lot of information to take in at once. So I kind of want to just streamline things for you. So if you don't have a budget or a very small budget, then use your cell phone or a webcam. If you have a bit of a budget, then start with a point and shoot camera, especially if you can't afford a capture card. If you have a bit more, then get a interchangeable lens camera or a cheap camcorder and a capture card. Now, if you're doing this as a business or you're making money from streaming or something like that, and you want to get to the next level, then definitely go for the higher end camcorders with SDI out, especially if you're doing events, or get one of the cinema cameras. Anyway, I hope this video helps guide you to purchasing the right camera from you, but I want to know from you in the comments, like, what was the first camera that you started out with? What cell phone brand has the best cameras? And what is your own dream camera for yourself? Anyway, like and share this video if it was helpful, and make sure to subscribe for the next time we're in the studio.